Hello, humans. Welcome back to another episode of Awkward Setup at Work with me, your host, Emery. Like many people, I had a tough time with COVID, but luckily I wasn't really affected by it so much physically in terms of where I was living. I was in Hong Kong. We never really had it that bad. And I had the luxury and privilege to kind of have my own space, my own flat in Hong Kong during this time. But I didn't realize how much it affected me mentally and emotionally until I actually stumbled across some really cool Instagram posts about brains from today's guest. It instantly made me chuckle and it kind of made me think about kind of the emotions I was feeling a bit more as well. And her intro on her content is one of a kind. So do make sure you go look at her Instagram after this episode. Jocelyn, she is a brain coach, I would say with a twist. In her words, I help people to understand their brain better so they can shift perspective, find momentum, and create what they want most before they die. No big deal. Laughing emoji. So here's a guest for today. Welcome to the show, Jocelyn.
Hello, thank you so much. And I did bring my special brain cap, thinking
I
cap.
love that.
So
How did you come up with this?
well, the brain cap was a gift, but you need brain coaching?
Oh, bring cap first of all, yeah.
Brain
It was a
cap.
gift.
Brain cap showed up on my birthday by somebody. I was like, who? It had no send from address. I was like, who sent me this? They obviously know me well, and it turned out to be my best friend from like third grade. So,
Oh,
of
that must have been a
course.
bit creepy getting that at your doorstep. Like, what is this?
I was delighted, to be honest. I was like, this person just really, whoever it was, thank you.
That's amazing. And so give everyone a bit of context about, who you are and what you do. Just a very brief one.
Yeah, like you said, help people understand their brains better. So almost everything we do, what we believe, what we think, what we create, how we respond, how we treat people, what we think is possible is all linked back to what I like to call your BS or your brain stories. So I help people identify them and shift them so they create what they most want before they die.
I love that. And quickly, I'm so sorry to see your background as well, because obviously I watch a lot of your stuff on just on Instagram, and seeing it now talking to you live is quite surreal. And you also have a connection to Hong Kong. Am I right?
Oh yeah, my great great grandfather, yeah, Sir Arthur Grimble, was born there, and then he went on. He has this really fascinating life. He worked, with radio station with the BBC. When was this? I don't know, 1800 something. And then he traveled. I can't even imagine getting onto ships back in that
Mm,
time and just going out to see the world. He went to the Gilbert and Ellice Islands where he had my grandmother. So, yeah, it's kind of and he was
wow.
born on my birthday.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's some full circle stuff.
They also made apparently this Hollywood movie. I can't remember the name of it. I've never seen it. I still want to see this, but his my mom and her sisters are like, yeah, it's terrible. I'm like, yes, I want to see it for sure.
That's amazing. And have you ever been to Hong Kong, or have you ever been to this side of the world?
Never been to Hong Kong. The closest I've been is probably Tokyo,
Mm,
where I went on this mad dash 4 day trip with a client to do some filming.
wow, wow. I've never been to Tokyo. In fact, it was my first time in Japan, just only 2 years ago. And a lot of people in Hong Kong, they love going to Japan. So it was very weird of me, born here, that have not been to Japan. And I remember seeing electric toilets for the first time. I was like, wow. What is this? So we're living in the future. It's an amazing place. You spent 4 days there, and obviously, I reckon. Did you manage to see a lot of places, or not really?
Not really, mostly what we were filming this is for this corporate video, and it was talking about interests of people. It was this global company, and I was helping sort of like brand direction, helping spur talking points for conversation, and sort of keeping the narrative in line with what they wanted. And at one point, it was a very lean crew, by which I mean there's like four of us there, and I know I studied about four words I could remember in Japanese. And they said, we need some props because we were showing what people love to do. And one of them is like fishing, another one is geocaching, which I'd only learned about doing that shoot. They're like, can you
Hmm.
go down to like a Target or something and go find these props? Well, there's no like one big store
Oh
where you
yeah,
go
yeah,
and find
yeah.
everything.
And there's so many
So I went
buildings and lights everywhere.
it was so yeah, I was like, "Oh my god." So I went and wandered and looked for these things, and I was trying to communicate. I was like, "I need the fishing line and the pole." And they're like, "Well, basically what it came down to is that you could get the pole in one place and like the line in another," something like that. It was like, "Okay,
Ah.
I'm gonna have to make a big journey." So that was the most I saw, was traveling and trying to figure out how to find these random ridiculous props with people who I could barely I was just charading with.
Oh, what an experience. I bet you can remember that for a lifetime. And what I like to do always before we kind of start properly is kind of do like a quick rapid fire round with all my guests to get ourselves a bit more warmed up. So are you ready? First one,
Yes.
coaching or speaking for you?
Ooh. Speaking came first, but they're so close. I think they both overlap in some ways.
Yeah? Oh, yeah, you can have that. I think you like this one. Crying or dancing?
Dancing.
Dancing.
But you can
And
do both.
yeah.
Yeah.
And what is your go-to song when you need a bit of motivation?
Wow. Go-to song. For some reason, this is not my go-to song, but what came up was "Fly Like an Eagle" by
Okay,
Seal. Like yeah, I don't know.
that's good. And what's your favorite meal? Describe the setting for me as well.
Favorite meal. Okay, first that was vinegar, but then ceviche. So ceviche, yes, I said vinegar, but we
Oh
can get
yeah, I
back
was
to
like,
that. But I love salty, vinegary foods. So sitting on a beach where you can go surfing and there's a calm area, and I'm doing absolutely nothing except maybe trying to figure out some new language in a place I've never been, and
deja
everyone
vu.
is very peaceful and happy, and um, just filling up on ceviche and then getting into the water.
Oh, love that. And last two, fill it in the blanks for me. Monday is,
Rewarding,
and work is.
nourishing.
Oh, nice. So normally I like to ask the guests kind of what their first concept of work was when they were just a couple of years old. But for you, I think I want to start with something a little bit different because you have experienced or experiencing a great life story. So I want to ask you, what was your idea of just what life was in general when you were so little? Because the reason why I asked is that you basically kind of you were homeless when you were 7 years old.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. So what was life? Oof. I guess I would say at that point, uh, life was uncertain and unsettled, and this crazy dichotomy between losing everything and gaining everything. Um, I had my dad was a very solid figure. My parents split and we moved to Hawaii, and that's how my house burned down from a lava flow at that point. And so it was sort of like I had this grounding force, but also feeling like literally the ground slipped out beneath me. So
Mm.
yeah, it was scary and also a fascinating place to explore. When you see something like lava at that age,
Did you see it
it's
like actually coming down?
yeah, I mean, I've seen it many, many
Oh
times.
my
I've
god.
walked on it when it was a day old. I've taken friends to go see it. It's just indescribable what that feels like to see, um, because it's life force and destruction in one insanely captivating phenomena.
Mm. And is it so obviously the reason why you're homeless was the lava came down, but was it the case where when you were living there you also had to be kind of quite cautious every day, or was it kind of quite unexpected what happened?
Well, in some ways it was unexpected. I mean, we moved into this house and then it was April Fool's Day. uh, when we got the news, it was sort of like, Pele is coming to destroy your house. We're like, what?
Oh my
Not funny.
god.
And we didn't know anybody. We just moved there. So we didn't know really anyone. And we didn't know where to go. So we went to a homeless shelter. And this homeless shelter was for women and children. And it was me and my dad. So he talked his way into letting us stay there.
Mm.
And he was always a brilliant storyteller and orator. And uh, so I can't remember exactly how long. It was a couple of months before we could get into another house. So I wasn't terrified in the sense that I think a lot of people who are homeless in a lot of situations are literally looking out for their lives and fearful on the streets. And, especially I can't imagine being a woman who's
Mm,
homeless alone. But it was definitely, I mean, when you're that young and something like that happens, you're definitely on edge, and sort of
yeah.
looking for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah. So then, do you think that also changed? I mean, I guess then at that age, what was your idea of working then? Because that would have been really different for you as well.
Yeah, I read a lot and I wrote a lot and I made up games and I choreographed dance moves and I wandered into the forests and the jungles and interacted with a lot of feral animals. Um,
Wow.
and I guess for me, I wasn't conscious that it was work, but I was putting in so much time in creating stuff. And I think I'm lucky in the sense or fortunate that I get to equate that with work. Is the creating something because there's toil to it. There's parts that are uncomfortable or that drive you crazy, but in the end, you know that it's for something bigger.
Mm.
And uh, and then over the years, I remember at one point I made this chart for my dad equating certain chores. Washing dishes equals $2. Vacuuming the whole house, $5, etc. He thought it was cute and put it on the fridge. I never got any allowance because I saw other kids get allowance. Like, what's the deal? I'm getting a raw deal. I was raised on welfare, so I didn't really understand either that that wasn't possible. Uh, and then later, my dad was like, stop trying to focus on earning money. Just enjoy what you're doing.
Ah, okay.
Great advice. And still, though, I'm like, yeah, but I want the new Nikes. So I would find my way into jobs. I would later in my teens, I would work at a palm nursery and prune palms, and I assembled rock walls and painted porches and
Wow.
did a lot of physical labor. I wanted to learn how cars worked, so I talked my way into a mechanics shop.
Mm.
I wanted to understand how things worked and how to manipulate them, I guess, with my hands and get a sense like viscerally of how that stuff worked.
That's amazing. Because a lot of people would just not do that, right? Because you don't really have to. But you kind of always had that. Can I say curiosity when you were young?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yes, curiosity for sure. Sometimes it leads you to unexpected
Too much.
places or gets you in trouble. But yeah.
I can see that, yeah. And so I mean, um, can I say you haven't really got the most, I guess, straightforward life events. Some might say, having a later start of things. But I mean, to me, and I remember actually commenting on one of your posts recently as well about kind of setbacks. So you've had a few setbacks in your time, and I kind of think having setbacks kind of sometimes make you who you are. I don't think people actively would want to have if they're given a choice. I don't think people would actively ask for setbacks, but I think it does actually build your character, it makes you who you are, and sometimes it's kind of an advantage in some ways. And because obviously looking at the last 10 years of your life as well, tell us what happened, because in particular, I want to kind of you to talk more about kind of exactly how you got yourself into that mental state where you were like, oh, I just want to go do things for myself, and then you actually just went out there and created this great company and this great kind of brand that you've got at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, first, I think setbacks are a wonderful um, breeding ground for creativity and curiosity because if you aren't where you want to be, you can be in now go, okay, what do I want? How do I get there? And you can try different things and experiment. And so when I was, how old was I? 26. 25 or 26, I got a job at a marketing agency. And so prior to that, I graduated my undergraduate, took me a long time, 7 years. And I had finally graduated with an English degree and I'd found out about this world of copywriting. I thought, oh, you
Mm,
can get paid to write more than like a journalist and kind of make poetry in a sort of fashion. That was my romanticized version of it. So I got a job at a marketing copywriting agency, and that didn't last long. I had a lot of questions. I had a big attitude problem, as they called it, because I was like, why are we doing dumb things? Like, why are you sending me emails that you want me to forward to someone else? That's a waste of time. Why are you doing the
Ah,
spreadsheets this way? It's like that we could save so much time if we just like do away with this and get it automated or whatever. Um, and I suggested ideas that no one actually said yes to exactly. Like, I think we should do a direct mail campaign. And I just decided to, to do things. And they're like, okay, but no, this
this is not
isn't
what
how
we
it
do
works.
here. Yeah,
This,
yeah,
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 exactly.
yeah,
This isn't how we do things here.
yeah.
Where's your flair? And so, yeah, I got mouthy. And um, what I like to say is I got quit because basically things escalated. Again, I got mouthy with my boss. I say it in quotes because it was supposed to be a flat structure. And
Mm.
um, I got in a tiff with her and wasn't very nice. It's like, why don't you go run and tell the owner about all these problems like you always do? I'm going to go to my appointment, had a doctor's appointment. She questioned its legitimacy. I freaked out on her
Mm.
and I'm like, fuck this, I'm out. So I left. And later that night, all my emails stopped working. And I'm like, what's going on? Hey, IT guy, do you know why my email doesn't work? Oh, I have no idea. And then I got a call from the boss and the head of HR, and they're like, "Sorry to hear you quit." Like, excuse me?
Ah,
No, 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 no. You're gonna have to fire me. And I marched in the next day and was so nervous. I was like, "No, you got to fire me. Like I didn't quit. You know, that's not aligned with my integrity. So you have to be
yeah.
honest about it. Tell me I suck." Uh, so anyway, later that day, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to start my own company. These ladies started this company in their 20s, not knowing anything. Here I am in my 20s, not knowing anything. Perfect recipe.
Mm.
So I named my company, I think it was that day or the next day, and renamed it about a week later because it was a terrible name. It was called Histoire, with like the French word for story. No one can
Okay.
say it right. It's like, what's this? And so I renamed it to Scribe. Yeah, and that went amazingly well for several years. Built it up over time, and it wasn't until COVID that I totally changed direction. But that was really my motivation for just kind of like, okay, well here I am. I don't
Mm.
know what else to do. I'm just going to start my own thing. Seems like maybe that's better for me.
That's really cool. I mean, one of your key messages you mentioned as well is that life is short, and then you want to help people realize what they want the most before they die. And I love the way you kind of put it as well. And that's kind of what I want to speak about on this podcast. But you just do it in a much better way than I do, with some scientific facts behind it as well. But why do you think it's so hard for people to find what they want?
Well, I mean, think of all of the narratives that fill up our brains over the course of our entire lives. So even up until how old are we? 18-ish, when how different international standards can be different when we graduate from what we call high school here.
Mm.
I say that because my boyfriend went to the Netherlands. He's like, "What's high school?" Um, so by that time, we've been filled with stories on what it means to be a quote productive member of society, and here are the hoops to jump through. 1 + 1 = 2. I mean, a lot of even the grading system is based on creating productive little factory workers,
Mm. Mm.
not creative, inspired, curious humans. That stuff is largely discouraged or even beaten out of us. So even by then, before our frontal lobe is even fully developed, we're in this swirl of stories that say, I got to go X, Y, and Z. I think it's changing a bit, but for decades at least, it was go
Mm.
to college, get a good job. Even in our parents' lifetimes, it was like you get the job for life, which
Yep.
changed dramatically. And this is what you do, and then march along until you retire, and that's when you can enjoy yourself and then die.
Mm.
What the fuck
Basically,
is
yeah.
that? Like,
I know. It's quite
it's a
mad when
shitty
you
story.
yeah, when you say it out loud like this, it's mad how you are essentially, all of us are being put into school for that many years, but then we are kind of just being told to do kind of in the essence the same thing as everyone else.
Yeah. It's like, go fit into this slot. We want to be able to categorize you, measure your productivity, fiduciary responsibility. It's just like, it's no way to live. And it's like, as if you could predict the future or say that a linear path could lead to anything. When has that ever paid off? Nothing in nature is linear,
Mm.
and we're very bad at predicting, and we often base our predictions based on what we know, and if what we know is only this, cockamamie of stories that aren't real, that somebody else made up, and usually in an effort to control something. I'm getting
Mm.
way on my soapbox here, but
I love it. I love it.
then it's like, it's no wonder we feel lost and confused when we try to figure out what it is that we really want, because we've been told our whole lives that it should be something else for the most part.
Mm. Now the next part I like to do like assumptions around kind of what the general belief on kind of what work is and passion and that kind of stuff. So Awkward Turtle thinks that passion is something that I'll just pursue later. Right now I don't have the time for it. I need to put my head down and just earn money and get some stability. What are your thoughts on people kind of have that belief?
They're not mutually exclusive. You can have both things. And in fact, if you're not pursuing what drives you, what lights you up, what triggers dopamine. I'm literally reading this book right now, The Molecule of More, which is all about dopamine.
Mm.
It's dangerous if you have too much. But if you're not doing that, you're doing a disservice to your brain. You're just going to keep depleting yourself. You're not giving it the fuel and the spark of inspiration and curiosity and creativity that we need. Like, one of my favorite books is called Play by Dr. Stuart Brown. And he says, when we
Okay.
stop playing, we start dying. And that to
Ah,
me is just so powerful. And
wow, I
even
just
in
got
nature,
goosebumps a little bit.
yeah, it's, yes, so it's, you need it. You absolutely need play to survive and to function as a healthy human being.
Yeah. Um, Being a brain coach, honestly, I've never actually come across this term before, um, but it makes a lot of sense because I feel like as humans, we love making sense of a lot of things around us. We love making sense of, we build schools, we have industries, we have all this stuff that to make sense of what everything else is around us. But I think, we don't really have a lot of emphasis on ourselves. And I do think, to be good at anything, you have to really understand yourself, like really understand like what you're good at, what you're bad at, what you hate, what you enjoy, all that kind of stuff. So then I guess my question would be, how did you come across this at first? How did you see it as a thing you want to pursue as like a career or your work, your daily life? And is it right in saying like this was because of your dad?
Yeah, it's a, again, not a linear path, right? So I've always sort of been interested in the brain, how things work, and the
Mm,
brain to me was fascinating. It's this thing that processes and creates worlds, and it has imagination, and it also controls all the things in our body and keeps us alive, and then it tells stories. It's just this like super interesting little squishy blob of goo that is a supercomputer
mm, mm,
for
mm.
us. And yeah, when my dad had a stroke, I was in my early 20s, and that he lost his ability to speak um, for a while. He gained it back. Spoiler alert. It's a happy story. But that opened up this whole world to me of neuroplasticity, of the fact that you can rewire even a physically damaged brain to create new connections.
Right.
And I
Okay.
kind of had planted the seed of like, wow, what else is possible? If a damaged brain can do this, what can a healthy brain, what
Mm.
else is possible?
Yeah, isn't it what they say? Like we only use like 3% or like ridiculously small amount of our actual brain power.
I don't know
Is
where
that
that came
true?
from. I don't, no, I mean, so I think it's sometimes this is like the power of narrative, right? Somewhere along the way, I think someone said we use this crazy small percentage to help us understand, conceptualize that there's still much more to
Uh,
know. There's so much unknowable, and there's so much in it. There's new connections and things we can do to build perception and awareness and understanding. So I don't know if there's any validity at all. From what I understand, it's not a true statement.
uh-huh.
But the thing about stories and science and all of it is it's messy and it changes, and who knows? Who knows what we'll find out? But no, I don't think, because we used to think of the brain also as being more of strict locations for things, and now it's well understood that there's circuits and connections and things are going all the way across, all these different areas. It's complicated. Um, so I think it might be impossible to determine how much of it we use. Maybe it's all of it. I don't know.
Mm.
Maybe some of us.
Yeah, not all of us. And sorry, you were saying about kind of you were just thinking about how is it possible to kind of if we can actually use what we can do with a healthy brain.
Yeah, so it wasn't until years later, so well after I started Scribe, and Scribe at the time was me, at the very beginning was me writing, can I earn enough to eat a sandwich, right? And then it grew and it became a consultant for brand voice narrative, and then that evolved into training and leading workshops. So I was training international teams on how to tell better stories and how to better master their language. So
Okay.
I loved the workshops and I started to get quite bored with the purpose, like I don't really care about the brand story so much as I care about how people are processing their own stories and how they're interacting, how they're collaborating, how they're feeling. Because to me, in a lot of corporate environments, I saw a lot of stifling of that creativity and curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
and that drives me crazy. So I started sneaking in more and more brain facts. I started connecting with neuroscientists and psychologists and human behavior experts, philosophers, to understand more about how do stories affect us? How does this, align to what's happening in our brains? Until 2016, I found a program called Neuro Leadership Institute, and they specialized in helping you become a coach, like understand the neuroscience and neurological underpinnings of the stories we tell, essentially, and how to shift them. And so I was like obsessed and like, this is awesome. Now I don't have to go to school for another 4 to 7 years, however long, to become a neuroscientist. I had already got my MFA. I do not want to go back to school
Yeah.
full time.
Were you quite into
Um,
science when you were in school?
yeah, I loved, like I said, sort of picking things apart and
Mhm.
experimenting. And I don't know if I told you this, but when we had in high school, we had to do a dissection of a fetal pig.
Mm.
And our assignment was look at everything in its abdomen, like the organs. And no one suggested look into its skull, cut open its skull and look at its brain. So I was like, I'm doing that, obviously. So got the little saw and like was my best friend. She's like, you're nuts. And I remember like cutting it open. Nobody else was doing this. They're like, what is wrong with that one? And I was like looking at this little tiny, like not much bigger than this little guy.
Mm.
It's probably smaller actually. And just like I'd seen this orb of angelic song light just going ah. It's like, what is this thing? So yes, say I had a
Uh,
little mad scientist.
oh, that's as I never actually liked school. I enjoy going to school because I did a lot of sports. So my school years was basically just running around and playing sports whenever I can. But I hated being in lessons, and I never was into science at all or maths or anything. But in the last with COVID as well, I think as well because it kind of gave me a lot of free time and I started to read books and things like that. Never read a book in my life before unless I was told to in school. So last year was
Mm,
really the first time I actually sat down and bought a book myself and I actually read a book. And then I think I read something around. I read a book on Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, and it talks about a lot of how the brain works and how probably not in a very in-depth level, but it talks about how sleep basically affects a lot of what you do and how you memorize things and what sports does as well. And then since then, I kind of like you as well, kind of just got a bit not obsessed, but I just started thinking about what I'm doing now is what kind of messages that sending to my brain or what is my brain telling me right now, and it actually helps me a lot with like discipline and just kind of just being a bit more intentional with what I'm doing with my time. um, did you find that as well at first?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the more sort of to your earlier point about the, like self-awareness, right? The more you can understand about how you work, you have a little more power to learn how to shift it and and to be curious about it, which is again leading to play, experimentation, learning, growth, all of those great things. Um, I think partly because I was also, so as I was doing those workshops, I got so sick, like terrified, especially at first. I got so sick. I gave myself hemorrhoids. Like I was so wound up and
Oh,
terrified
because of
of public
stress?
speaking. Yes.
Ah, okay.
And I was just, in my head, if I could dissect it, it was just like not nice things. You're going to fail. You're stupid. You have nothing good to say. They're all going to think you're an idiot. Get out of here. Who are you? Blah, 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 like imposter syndrome stuff,
Mm-mm.
self-worth stuff. And so between the Neuro Leadership Institute and then just prior to that, like 2 years prior to that, I had started improv. And because I thought, what's the scariest thing I can think of? Standing in front of a bunch of people not knowing what to say. Okay, well then, what is improv? Okay, it's exactly that. So how about go do that? Um, and at first, like I regretted that decision signing up for class until I did it, and that turned into 4 years of doing it. And I could see what was happening as I was confronting this thing, as I became more aware that what I was experiencing was just like a lie, from old stories that my brain was telling me, and
Mm.
then I could change them by, observing it and engaging and actually doing something. So, yes, for sure, that, if the more people can understand what's going on and then learn what works for them in causing, effective change, then the better, how much better all of us will be.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I mentioned earlier briefly as well. Your content is gold. I love how you make something that's, if I'm honest, usually a bit more of a boring topic. In terms of what people would think about the brain and all that science stuff. Maybe boring isn't the right word. It's, I guess, the narrative of the brand of the brain has not always been the most sexiest thing that people talk about. So I love how you kind of make it so funny to watch, but you also make it so easy for people to digest. And it's just in little short little clips that you come across. Is that because was it because you kind of marry what you had about what you learned about brain and improv and the comedy stuff that you did all together?
Yeah, for sure. I think because I love comedy, I've always been in awe of stand-up comedians in particular, and really, really good improvisers. Like Middleditch and Schwartz, they're the best. And just the ability to delight people and cause them to think about really serious topics in a really, with such levity,
Mm,
and change perspectives even, and build communities. And it's such a magical power that comedians have. And I didn't pursue that. And also I was like, not going to go late at night for all, I'm not willing to put in the same amount of work that they did. And they put in insane amounts of work to even perfect one joke can take several years.
mm,
And just the amount of rejection and it's amazing
mm.
what they do. So yes, I love comedy. I want to give it an ode to it. And then also storytelling, and then also, yes, about the brain and making it accessible and fun. And so that, what, like the Tiny Tips for Your Brain series
Mm.
that I do, is basically a reflection of how my brain works. It's chaotic and all over the place, and it's making strange connections, and it's a little messy. And I hope it's fun and useful.
That's so good. And coming on towards the end of the show now, because the name of the show is called Awkward Turtle, I always like to end on, what advice would you like to give to a turtle?
Oh, also, by the way, turtles are some of my favorite animals. They're called honu, the sea turtle
Oh,
in Hawaii.
yes. Do you want to tell that little
And
story that you mentioned to me? I think you mentioned something about having a turtle coming up to you when you were
oh,
surfing.
oh yeah. So the first time I saw one, I was very young, and you're not supposed to touch them, so don't do this. But
Oh, okay.
somebody who was surfing, this is when I was a kid, had this turtle. They were like stroking its back, and we all sort of, like maybe 5 or 6 kids, were so in awe of this amazing creature. We gathered around. I was like, wow, what a fascinating, what's going on in
Mm,
his little brain. And it's just so cool. And then, yeah, when I was surfing once I went out, it was extremely quiet. It was very early morning, like right after sunrise, and the water is what you call really glassy, just
Yeah.
super smooth and quiet. And you
Mm.
hear, when the waves come in, and then there's just the lulls between. So you just hear like the slap of your surfboard on the water, and that's about it. And then right next to me is just this. I was just like, "What the hell is that?" And it was, I thought it was a shark or something. I don't know. It's a sound. It's weird. And it was a turtle just coming up for air and then going back down about his business.
Oh
It was
wow.
like right next to me. Yeah.
Wow, I've never seen a sea turtle. It's definitely on my list because I like how they are just so like calm and they just seem to be so like chill. They're just doing their, like you said, just doing their own thing, and then they are just kind of just floating about, and I love how they're always kind of in a group setting as well. And they could be on land, they could be in water. I just think they're like an amazing kind of creature. Sorry, would you
Yeah.
go? Yeah. So, what would you
Right.
the device? What would you give to a turtle?
An awkward turtle. Be yourself, because turtles are amazing, and keep exploring. See how you can turn hard things into a moment to learn and play. See how you can tap your playfulness and get out of your head and just into the moment.
Mm, amazing. Well, brilliant. I think that covers it all. If our listeners want to know more about you, which I'm sure they would, where's the best place to find your work?
JocelyNBrady.com, and also at Jostle Them on Instagram. That's JOCELTHEM, like them, not us. And on YouTube is also Jostle Them, or you can go on LinkedIn, Jocelyn Brady.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time again and sharing your story and being so open with me on this show. You are just incredible, and I love the way you approach topics like this and just make it very easy for people to listen as well. And I can really feel the love that you do for your work, and I love how your work makes people love what they do as well. So just an amazing thing overall. So, guys, if you're feeling you can do more and put more good in the world, but not quite sure how yet, or you just want to be a better person in general, understand a bit more about yourself, go have a look at Jocelyn's work. Her content, like I mentioned several times now, is very helpful and funny, and I'm sure you will love it as well. All the information will be on the show notes, so make sure you go check them out in a second. Finally, don't forget to tell me who you are and what passion you are thinking about pursuing. All right then, Awkward Turtle, over and out.